Reboot your credit card with Apple Card, the only credit card designed for iPhone. It gives you up to 3% daily cash back on every purchase. It's real cash that never expires or loses value. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Subject to credit approval. Daily cash is available via Apple Cash Card issued by Green Dot Bank, member FDIC, or as a statement credit. Terms and more at applecard.com. Hello and welcome to another episode of Working Overtime, the advice-focused Oops All Berries to Working's Captain Crunch. I'm your host, Isaac Butler.
And I am usually the producer, but today I'm your other host, Cameron Drews. And Isaac, this is kind of an unusual episode today, right? Usually Working Overtime is every other week. This is an off week. But recently, you and I recorded a great interview that is very advice-focused. So we thought it would be great for the Working Overtime listeners. We're putting it out there as a bonus episode. Can you tell everybody what we have in store?
Heck yeah, I can, Cameron. Today we are talking with AJ Ayers. So she is a former music journalist and editor. If you're a fan of the 33 1/3 line, she used to edit for that line. And she now works as a financial planner and advisor. So she specializes in working with artists and freelancers to, figure out their money and what it's doing and how to make more of it and generate more of it and plan for retirement and taxes and all that stuff. We sought her out because, I feel like the kind of background question to a lot of what we talk about in working, and especially working overtime, is money. How do you afford to do the work that you actually want to do? And how do you afford to have any kind of work-life balance when you're freelancing? So I thought, why not seek out someone who knows and is comfortable talking about money and just ask her some of those questions?
Yeah, these are really hard questions, and I sat in on this interview. AJ is refreshingly frank about money stuff, so our listeners, I think, will get a lot out of it. So why don't we get to it? Let's hear your conversation with certified financial planner.
Trademark,
AJ Ayers.
AJ Ayers, thank you for joining us on this episode of Working.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
So let's just start with maybe a little bit of prehistory. You were a music journalist, you were in the music writing world, and then you transitioned to financial planning. Can you talk to me about that journey a bit?
Sure. Yeah, it was a hop, skip, and a jump. I actually started in book publishing. So I was working in book publishing, editing books about music. Then I transitioned to music journalism at Bandcamp, which was a fantastic company, an amazing place to work. And then I started making money because I was working for a tech company and not in book publishing anymore. Wondered what I was supposed to do with money. I figured I should invest it or save it. Looked around for some advice. Couldn't find anyone who was speaking my language. So I decided to start a podcast, go back to school, start a business. And here we are 6 years later.
That's wild. So, what did you then go back to school for? Like, what is the actual?
Yeah, so I now I have a bunch of credentials. I'm a CFP, which is a certified financial planner. That's probably the most important one, the one I'm most proud of. I'm also an enrolled agent, an EA, which is an IRS designation, so I know a ton about taxes. I'm also a CEP, which is a certified equity professional. There's a couple other letters that I think I've lost, that I've dropped off since I don't do the continuing education anymore.
And I've noticed you're not the first financial planner who I've noticed that has the words certified financial planner all in caps with a little trademark in their bio. So there must be, well, how does one become certified? What does it mean to be certified? Are there legal ramifications to certification? Like, what is that whole thing?
Yeah, great question. And yes, the official trademark of you have to call yourself a CFP, all caps with a little trademark, or a certified financial planner, all capitals with a TM. They are very uptight about that.
Do they specify the font, or are you allowed to use whatever font you choose?
I'm sure that if we use the wrong font, they would let you know. So yeah, basically to become a CFP, you go to take 6 classes in retirement, taxes, financial planning, insurance, and a few other ones. And you basically build a financial plan under the tutelage of an existing CFP or financial advisor. And then you have to take this really nasty, hard 6-hour test. Once you do that, then you have to work in the industry under the care of a CFP, basically like an apprenticeship. You can do it in 2 years really quickly if you're working full time, or you can spread it out over 3 years. You got to get enough experience hours. It's kind of like becoming a therapist in some ways, but learning a lot more rules and regulations.
You know, I assume because you work with a lot of artists and culture type folks, a lot of them are freelancers, I would guess, or at least have some portion of their income that's coming from that world. What do you feel like are the common problems that freelancers, and in particular freelancers in the arts, face?
So the biggest problem I see is this idea that it should just work, right? That's like the big overarching thing. Like, I'm going to leave my job. I'm going to go be freelance. It's not working. It's been 6 months. Why isn't this working? I'm great. Like, there must be something wrong with the system. There's nothing wrong with the system. You've just chosen something harder. You've chosen to live outside the system. Our economy is based on people having a job at a company that provides them with healthcare. So when you decide to go freelance, one of the biggest changes I see and problems is just not accounting for how much more expensive it is to be a business owner. A lot of people use the word freelancer. I don't like that word. You're a business owner. You own a business. You are the CEO. You are the marketing director. You are HR. You are the retirement division. You're payroll. You're all these. How much are you going to pay yourself? And I've never met anyone that has all of those skills as a business owner. I have a business partner, and between the two of us, we have like 70% of the skills that you need to run a business, but we still had to hire other people. So I would say, like, number one, just not expecting how expensive it's going to be, and just not having that little bit of like cushion or cash flow, whether that's you yourself saving money in, some people call it an emergency fund, to allow yourself to fail, right? You're not going to succeed right away. Well, I hope you do, but you might not. So having that cushion of cash flow, and or a partner who can also help you through like the ups and downs. Running a business is hard. It's not a paycheck every 2 weeks. There's going to be highs and lows, and you have to protect yourself from the period where it's not going to be that great.
I know one of the big things that many of my friends complain about, and have for as long as I've been doing this, is, of course, they get the surprisingly large tax bill at the end of the year. It's like you're told, no matter how many times you're told, they're not withholding on those checks. You sort of forget about it. Huge bill at the end of the year. And this is, I think, as far as I can tell, gotten worse due to the Trump tax changes, which really stuck it to freelancers in a few areas in terms of how you deduct things and things like that. But part of this is also, the lack of withholding. How can freelancers better plan for tax time?
Save 50% of every dollar that you make as a freelancer in a bank account. Period. Full stop.
50%.
50%. I hope your tax rate's not 50%, but if you live in New York City and you're married, it's probably pretty close. Right. It might be 42%. People, their eyes bug out of their head when I say that. But if you save it and you end up with money left over at the end of the year, well, guess what? Congratulations. Now you have your emergency fund for next year, right, when business gets bad. So save 50%. If you absolutely cannot do 50%, do 30%. If you absolutely can't do 30%, do 10%. You know what I mean? Right. Like, it's, you just, as a business owner, you're the payroll department. You have to do your own withholding. So you have to pull some of that back.
Now, a lot of folks struggle with the LLC question, if they should be setting one up. Obviously I know every person's different, but what are the questions you should be asking yourself as you make that decision?
Number one question, are you in danger of getting sued? Is your work requiring you to take care of children or take care of people's pets or something like that? Are you subjecting yourself to legal liability? If so, you probably need an LLC. That's a legal liability corporation. If not, if you're, let's say, a video editor and you're editing videos for a couple different companies from the comfort of your own home and you're just getting started, you probably don't need an LLC. Don't overcomplicate it for yourselves. As you get bigger and people might demand that they work with a corporation, you might have to start an S corporation at some point. But before you do, talk to an accountant. Fun fact, folks, if you're in New York City, do not have an S corporation. There is a nasty, almost 9% tax on all corporations in New York City. So our firm almost never recommends S corporations for our folks that live in New York City.
What is an S corporation for people who don't know?
So an S corporation, it stands for small corporation. So we've all heard of C corporations. Those are the big companies. A small corporation, it basically just removes the money and the business from you, the person. So it's just taxed differently. We can talk about that on another accounting podcast. It can be helpful in reducing your tax bill if you're able to pay yourself a fair wage, but it adds complication. It adds having to pay someone to do your payroll. You have to file a completely separate tax return as a business. So S corporation is not always the right answer. So if you're listening and you're like, I'm starting a business and my friend told me to get an S corporation, get a second opinion. It's not always the right answer.
So are there, just to talk some real specifics here, are there specific budgeting tools that you recommend freelancers use?
Budgeting sucks. Right. Yeah. We all hate it. It depends on what kind of person you are. If you're like me and you love spreadsheets, which you're probably not, there's a great tool called Personal Capital, which I think is owned by Empower now. That's what I use for some personal stuff. It grabs all of your credit card information. So you're not really entering every single thing that you do. You're kind of just helping it categorize things. I also love this app called Daily Budget, which is very simple. So when I'm going through a period of like, ooh, shit, I'm spending too much money, like I need to rein it in a little bit, then I want something more manual where I have to enter every purchase I'm making and then that helps me rein in my spending. So Daily Budget's definitely my favorite. It's just super simple interface. Budgeting, it doesn't work. Budgeting doesn't work. Limiting ourselves to something each month, I hate. So I like kind of flipping it on its head and saying, I'm not budgeting, I'm investing for my future. So I'm going to put, let's start small. Let's say I'm going to put $200 a month away in an investment account. Maybe I'm not ready to invest. I'm going to put it in a high yield savings account at a different bank from where my checking account is. I need to put that $200 away every month. Next year, I'm going to do $300. So whatever I need to do to be able to put that aside without going into credit card debt, that's my budget for the month. Spend it on whatever you want. You like to go out to eat, go out to eat. Like I don't like this like shaming of saying, well, I can only spend $650 on Seamless this month, and then my budget's going to blow up in my face.
Right. It's sort of like exercise, where it's like the exercise routine you want is the one that you will actually keep doing, right? It's like, if you're not going to keep doing it, what's the point?
Exactly.
Now, we've talked about savings a bit. What kind of bank account should you be putting that money in? Because there's like a gajillion different kinds of bank accounts.
There's 1 million bajillion kinds of bank accounts. In my opinion, keep your money life as simple as possible. You need one checking account at a bank that you can walk into. That might be controversial. If you've ever bought a house, buying a house without a bank that you can walk into and get a check, or someone you can call to get a nasty wire transfer, is hard. I've had clients use these like startup online banks. Those banks are hard to use for services when you need something from your bank. So checking account, money in and out for both personal and business. When we're talking about savings, when we're talking about money that we don't want access to, right? That's this whole idea of saving for retirement. All these Roth IRAs, all these 401ks, all this nonsense you've heard about is basically to protect yourself from your own money, to protect you from yourself, right? Like you can't touch it. There's a penalty if you go in there. That's a very effective way of saving for retirement. It's not as good as the government just doing it for you, but it's a pretty good, second place. So where should you put that savings account? In a high yield savings account, by which I mean a bank that is needing your money, and their marketing department has said, let's pay these people a lot of interest to lure them away from the Chases and Bank of Americas of the world to park their money at our online bank. So a high yield savings account should be paying you right now in today's interest rate environment at least 4%. So that's what we call it. And as interest rates rise and fall, that number will change. But your brick and mortar bank is going to be paying you 0.01% for use of that checking account because they're providing all these services. Whereas an online high yield savings account, they just want your money to park there so they can go lend it out to somebody else. Did that answer your question?
That did answer my question.
Savings account.
That did. High yield savings account, FDIC insured, of course. But yeah, there you go. When you're young and in the flush of the creative life, you can sort of forget that someday you're going to have to retire. Hopefully you'll have to retire, and you'll have health expenses and all sorts of other things and not the same income coming in. I'm just guessing you're going to say it's never too early to start thinking about retirement. What are some of the things you should be thinking about?
Yeah. I look back on my 20s. In my early 20s, I was working in book publishing, and book publishing, my salary was not enough to pay my rent and my little meager, cute existence in, East Williamsburg. I had to have a second job. So retirement was definitely not on my mind. Had I wish I started early? Absolutely. I happened to work at a company that had a 401k. So I actually was saving for retirement a little teeny bit each month. Sure. Let me get on my financial advisor high horse and say it's never too late. You should start investing. Da, 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 da. Sure. But if you can't, it's okay. Right. The best time to start saving for retirement was yesterday. The next best time is tomorrow. What I do think is important, no matter what, is getting in the habit of transferring something to an account that is marked as savings. If it can't be a 401k today, that's fine. If it can't be a Roth IRA, that's fine. Like we talked about this separate bank account. So to me, like my advice for young people, like I do a lot of this like college education or talking to folks like just out of college, like just get in the habit of transferring money from one account and watching that money leave and watching that savings account grow. The only way that you're going to get excited about retirement is if you watch those balances go up, right? So even if it's only $20 a month, just start there and just ratchet it up a little bit each month. That would be the only way to start. So save a little bit if you can, and don't feel bad if the number's really small, because life is long, hopefully.
We'll be right back with more of Isaac's conversation with AJ Ayers after this.
Reboot your credit card with Apple Card, the only credit card designed for iPhone. It gives you up to 3% daily cash back on every purchase. It's real cash that never expires or loses value. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Subject to credit approval. Daily cash is available via Apple Cash Card issued by Green Dot Bank, member FDIC, or as a statement credit. Terms and more at applecard.com.
Hey everybody, I just wanted to jump in really quick and remind you that we love getting your questions and answering them on Working Overtime. Isaac and June and Ronald have so much creative wisdom between them, so many good tips to share, so I would really encourage you to seek their advice. Send us a question about your creative work. You can send that email to working@slate.com. You can also record a voice memo on your phone and email it to that same address, or give us a call at 304-933-9675. That's 304-933-WORK. We would love to hear from you. Okay, let's return to Isaac's conversation with AJ Ayers.
Money and all the questions around money are very scary for people. Like there is an emotional component to this where like people don't want to look at it. They don't want to think about it. My heart rate has been lightly accelerated during this whole conversation. So there is an emotional part of your job, right? Which is like demystifying this stuff, making it not scary, making people understand that they can understand this stuff if they want to. Can you talk a bit about that part of your job and how you do it?
Yeah, it's terrifying, right? And that my whole pitch to new clients and, even on this podcast is like, I was you not long ago. The hardest part is just admitting that you don't know. And then looking around at your other friends and realizing like they don't have any idea either, or looking at your partner or looking at your parents or your siblings and going, hey, do you know what a Roth IRA is? And I guarantee you someone will know. Someone will have an answer. It will probably be the wrong answer, but someone will know what they're talking about. So that's really how I started, was looking around in my world and going, who do I know who knows anything about money? My friends were writers and poets and artists and musicians. No one knew anything about money. I wanted to become that person. And I have an uncle who worked in finance. So I called up my uncle and I said, hey, uncle, explain money to me. And that was the first episode of my money podcast, was like, I don't know anything about this. Explain to me like I'm 5, because my money knowledge is basically that of a 5-year-old. That was the last time I learned something about money in school.
Right. And for our listeners, definitely not for me or our producer Cameron, who's listening on this interview. What is a Roth IRA? I definitely know what that is, but I'm sure there's some people listening who don't.
Exactly. Basically, the government each year will let you put a certain amount of money into this special investment account, and you get a nice little tax break for it. That money that you put in a Roth IRA is not going to be taxed as it grows. Hopefully, you've invested it well. And as it's growing, it's not getting taxed. So it's real nifty. Love a Roth IRA here.
One thing that looms very scary in the imagination for a lot of people is home ownership, right? We've structured in this country, our society around the dream of homeownership. It undergirds so much of how American, even civic life is structured, and people want to participate in that, but it's very hard for freelancers to imagine they'll ever be able to do it for all sorts of reasons, including mortgage underwriters do not like the unevenness of freelancer income, for example. They want regular salaries, all sorts of stuff like that. When people talk to you about homeownership or wanting that, what do you tell them? How should we be thinking about it?
I try to talk people out of it all the time.
Yeah. Oh, great.
I really do. I mean, look, I'm a homeowner, so I don't want to. I'm a bit of a hypocrite here, but like, it's not right for everyone, and for some people, it truly is unattainable, and I feel for them. And renting is actually not that financially bad. In fact, we run certain calculators and show actually, if you rent forever and you save some money in the stock market, you'll actually end up better financially than you would owning a home. So yes, you're absolutely right. There is this American obsession with homeownership, and I get it. You want to put in the built-in shelves, you want to paint your room green. Like, I get it. You want to own that home. You want to be able to say to your parents, like, look at my beautiful home. I always say you can't throw a housewarming party in your stock portfolio, but like when you buy a home and you're in a lot of debt, everyone's so proud of you that that you put all of your entire net worth in this one asset that could flood at any moment. Like, good for you. So step one, homeownership is not all it's cracked up to be. I think there are a lot of tax incentives also for homeowners. So that's part of it. That's why we are literally incentivized to buy homes. Saving for a down payment as an unmarried freelancer on one income in New York City to buy a home is going to be very hard. Like, that potentially impossible, right? Add a second income to that, definitely becomes more achievable. Downsizing a little bit, that becomes more achievable. Moving out of one of the most expensive housing markets in the world, it becomes more and more achievable. So for freelancers, I say you have to be you're creative, right? Be creative. If you don't have a partner up with a friend and buy a house together. Now you have your down payment. I just think and I want to stress this a lot, like when you are free, you have chosen to live outside of the financial system. You are special. So the financial system is not set up to serve you. So you do have to think outside the box.
Yeah. That's a great point. It's a weird thing though. Like, not that you're an advocate or running an advocacy organization, but the other thing that's weird is that, freelancers are outside the system, but increasingly more and more people are freelancing or being pushed to the worst aspect of it, the gig economy. What do we do about that we have all these people that we're kind of shoving into freelance work at the same time that we don't have a legal or tax or financial framework that's really meant to take care of them? Yeah,
I think I predict laws are coming and laws are changing and the tax code is changing because there are so many people. When you live out, you have to be creative. If you're a veteran, there are amazing mortgages available to veterans. I talk a lot about this with my clients who often don't have the, 2-income traditional household. A lot of people are choosing to not get married for whatever reason. That puts you at an extreme disadvantage in the tax code and when buying a house as well. So, I do think that lenders are getting a little bit more lenient. They are starting to recognize that freelancers don't have W-2 jobs with paychecks every 2 weeks. You might pay a little bit of a premium, right? Like I said, you might have to pay 1% more on your interest rate because you got some weird loan that some lender made up for you. That's based on the cash flow of your business or what have you. Lenders, they want to loan you money, especially when interest rates are high. So, when lenders get desperate, that's a good time for you as a freelancer to say, hey, I've got some cash. You want to loan me some money at 9% to buy my dream home? I've seen it happen recently.
Got it. And of course, one of the things that people do when they're freelancers, especially now in the day of remote work, is they move. You don't have to be physically present wherever you are in an incredibly expensive city like New York, San Francisco, LA, or DC. I imagine you have clients who are thinking about moving, right? Is that often a smart option? Is the savings worth the lack of in-person networking and stuff?
So hard. I mean, look, you get one life. This is my woo-woo financial advice. You get one life. Live where you want to live, right? If you want to live in New York City, you're probably not going to live in a 3-bedroom apartment with tons of space as a freelancer, right? You're probably going to have to live in a small place. And New York City has to provide the shows and experiences and networking and fun and parties and food and all that. You have to be so in love with that to make lifestyle sacrifices is kind of the way I see it. So I've had dozens of friends move out of New York City I was like, I will always find a way to live in New York City. I will not do well in Austin, Texas. That's not a city for me. Like, I need to figure out how to be here. So I made changes in my life. I could not afford to live in New York City on a book editor's salary. Couldn't make it happen. So I made a change and I became a financial advisor.
Right.
I'm not saying you have to do that, but like, you can't have everything on your list. You might have to make some changes. If that farmhouse and that space is the most important thing to you, absolutely move.
Right.
The savings are significant.
Yeah. And of course, another one of the things that majorly impacts all of these questions is the decision to become a parent or not, right? To have
Absolutely.
children or not. Is that something that comes up a lot in your meetings with your clients about like, how do I figure that out? And again, I'm not asking you to give away all of your secrets. People should hire you if they want all of your advice. But like, what are those conversations like with artists? Because like, I have lots of friends who are artists and writers and stuff. It's how to make that work, particularly in New York City, is a very complicated question.
Yeah. And again, my non-answer is going to be like, if you want it badly enough, you'll make it happen. I think if raising a large family and having your kids walk to school and have everything be lovely and have them play in the backyard, probably not attainable in New York City. Some people can afford that, but it's not everyone. I do think, stepping back a little bit, I think we skipped a step, which was who you partner with in life. Right. The biggest investment you're ever going to make is who you share your life with. Does that person, it's like marry rich. And I don't mean rich I don't mean someone finds someone with a trust fund. They probably have an airtight prenup anyway, and you're not getting anything. But marry someone who has the same money values that you do, right? Marry someone who is not going to spring on your honeymoon on you that they have $200,000 in credit card debt. You have to talk about these things. So buying a house, the kid conversation, all these things come from, who are you partnering with?
Right. Another thing I want to talk about is taxes. You said you love taxes. Taxes are a delicious thing to you, so I want to take advantage of this. One of the things that comes up in conversation all the time with artists and with my friends and stuff is what you can and cannot deduct as a legitimate expense as a freelancer when it comes tax time. So people play very fast and loose with this. I had an accountant who retired, and the joke, and I want to make it very clear this was a joke, he would always say like, well, if you don't get audited, then it's up to you, right? But how fast and loose do you think people should play it with, deducting research expenses, that's in heavy quotes, and other things like that off their taxes?
I mean, the tax code is very specific. It says expenses must be ordinary and necessary. So obviously that's not very specific at all. That was sarcasm, by the way, in case anyone didn't get that. It's not specific at all, right? And the IRS does not understand that you are a freelance writer and that you needed to go to Italy to get inspired to write your next novel, or you needed to backpack through Europe to meet someone who then became your agent, or like whatever, So at the end of the day, if you don't need it for your job, it's not deductible. So if you get audited, an IRS agent will sit with you and go, what is this receipt? What was this for? And it's horrible and painful. I have seen it. I have seen creative types go through awful audits. It is very, very unlikely that you will get audited. As the IRS budget has been stripped away, it has become even less likely that you will get audited. Don't be stupid, right? Like buying a brand new TV and writing it off because you're a freelance writer, like, sorry. That's not ordinary and necessary. You needed to buy that TV anyway. Some of our clients are like successful cinematographers and filmmakers, and they're always like, well, I bought a designer gown for this award show because my film's not nominated for an award. Can I write that off? No. If it is a uniform that you have to wear for your job and you cannot wear it anywhere else, you can write it off. So I love a write-off as much as the next person, but really don't bend the rules too much, kids. And don't write off more than you make, right? Don't get your freelance income down to zero. I've seen people do that. If you do that 3 years in a row, you trigger what's called the hobby loss rules. Basically, the IRS is being like, that's not a job, that's a hobby. So that's not deductible anymore. So be smart about that.
That's amazing. So if you get too clever with it, they then tell you that you're not a real artist, and you not only lose the deductions, but you have the government officially telling you
you're a hobby.
You're a hobby. The very thing you're worried your parents might say to you at some point. Instead of your parents, the fucking U.S. government tells you, actually, you're not a real artist. This is just a hobby.
I mean, look, okay, everyone hates the IRS. Everyone hates taxes. As an accountant, the IRS is just trying to enforce the rules, right? Let's not hate the IRS. We have to pay taxes. By the way, folks, and I'm not calling out anyone in shame. If you have not filed your taxes for whatever reason, I know if you're listening, I know that at least half of the people listening have felt this. Like, yeah, it's been a few years and I haven't filed taxes because I'm scared. I get it. It's fine. You can come clean, and you can request what's called a wage and income transcript. And you can go to the IRS and say, hey, just wondering, like, what do you have on file for me? Just curious, like, what you got? And they will have a record of all the 1099s that companies have filed for you, all of the W-2s, meaning all those jobs you've had in the past, going back pretty far into the past. So, like, if you are in a place, we're all coming clean here, we're all friends. If you're in a place where you are delinquent with tax filing, it's okay. Find a good accountant. They will walk you through it. It's going to be okay. Pay your taxes. I have had so many clients come to us and say, with tears in their eyes and red in their face, saying, I haven't paid my taxes in 7 years. I don't want to go to jail. You're not going to jail.
No, you'll pay a fine.
You'll pay a fine. And the IRS is very reasonable. Like, they want their money. They're not going to say you owe us $100,000 tomorrow. They're going to say, how much money are you making right now? Why don't you give us, 3% of that each month for the next 5 years, and we'll come to an agreement together. So.
Yeah, I will actually come clean here and say there was 1 year in which I didn't file taxes, which was just being like a irresponsible. I wasn't like, I just literally, I found out, I don't know, maybe a year later, someone was like, did you realize you didn't file your taxes last year? I was like, what are you talking about? And it was actually like, I had to pay a fine on it. That wasn't fun, but it was a fairly painless experience. I had that exact nightmare of like, what is going to happen to me as a result of this? And actually, it was not actually a particularly difficult process or that painful to work out, except for feeling like, I was wasting money as a result, but it was my own fault.
Of course.
Yeah. So, you used to work in book publishing as an editor. You were then a music journalist. Is there any commonality between the skill sets there and what you do now? Or is it really just like you've had this, you nourish those parts of your life in other ways?
I mean, honestly, absolutely. Like the ability to talk to people about money and look them in the eye and say, I understand your situation. I understand you're frustrated. A lot of my clients are super successful, right? They're coming to me because something really good has happened in their lives financially, and they're terrified of making a mistake. And they don't trust anyone because they watched their parents get taken advantage of, or they read the news, or they just generally mistrust financial services because there's a lot of bad actors, and I don't blame them. So the skills that I learned as an editor and as a writer and as a communicator, being able to talk to people is absolutely a transferable skill. I wrote a blog post for our website, basically arguing that all English majors should go get their CFPs, because I think, I was never great at math. I don't want to hold myself out as like this math genius. Like, math was always a struggle for me. Words came easily. And then when I became a financial advisor, I got a math tutor to pass this stinking 6-hour test.
Right.
But I'm a really good financial advisor because I can talk to people. So if you can hold your nose and learn the skills, the software we have right now is amazing. You don't need to do math. Like, obviously you have to check your numbers sometimes, but like, financial advisors are not picking stocks anymore. They're talking to people, and they're keeping relationships together, and they're helping people through really scary, dark times. Like when COVID happened, everyone was out in the park playing with masks on. My business partner and I were working 90-hour weeks, helping people, talking them off a ledge, keeping their businesses alive, helping them get PPP loans, keeping people's money invested in the stock market, and begging them, not to have a nervous breakdown. Like, that's what a financial advisor does, is help you through those dark times. Because anyone can make money in the stock market when the economy is great. It's when things aren't good. That's when you really need help.
Thank you, AJ Ayers, so much for joining us on Working This Week to talk financial planning for creative types. I really appreciate you taking the time.
So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Isaac, That was great. AJ does not mince words, does she?
No, she does not. And I think that's awesome. You know, there's a kind of aggressive but friendly demystification of the whole money thing that I think springs from her own experience of realizing she didn't know how money worked and she needed to learn it, you know?
Yep.
Like, and it's a testament to the fact that you can learn this stuff. And you can also hire someone who knows about this stuff to help you. It does not have to be mysterious and scary. And in fact, I think that it's sort of set up deliberately in a way that's mysterious and scary, like by the financial industry, because they don't really want us thinking about it. Do you know what I mean? So you don't have to do that. You don't have to play by their rules. You can actually just go out and learn this stuff, hire someone, you know. I don't know about you, but I feel maybe 8.34% less scared right now.
Oh, me too. And the exact same percent.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode, but I'm going to say it one more time. Please follow Working wherever you listen to your podcasts. It used to be called subscribing. Now the button says follow. Just smash that button. That way you will never miss an episode. And if you have ideas for things we could do better or questions you'd like to address, we would love to hear from you. You can send us an email at working@slate.com or give us a ring at 304-933-WORK and leave a message.
And if you'd like to support what we do, sign up for Slate Plus at slate.com/workingplus. You'll get bonus content, including exclusive episodes of Slow Burn and Decoder Ring. You'll get bonus segments of shows like ours, and you'll be supporting what we do right here on Working.
Thanks to AJ Ayers for being our guest, and thanks to producer and co-host this time, Cameron Drews. We'll be back on Sunday with a brand new episode of Working, and we'll be back next Thursday with another episode of Working Overtime. See you then.